Everyone, this is Marina Joseph. I'm one of your SIs for this quarter. We're going to be going over the first lecture for Biol005B. So yeah, we'll just get started. The first term that we're going to go over is sister taxa. And so if that's not a term that you recognize, no problem, we'll be going over it in this video, but I definitely strongly recommend going over lecture if that's not a term that you recognize. Our definition for sister taxa is groups that share an immediate common ancestor. With this definition and all the other definitions that you're going to come across in Biol005B, I strongly suggest that you not only can identify the definition, but definitely you're able to apply that definition. At least from my experience with Biol005B, that was an essential part of success in the class. So make sure that you can confidently do that. So yeah, for several of the definitions that we'll be going over, I'm going to be using my family as an analogy. So here is, a picture of my family during our last trip to Egypt. And here is our family tree. So these two people are my parents, and that's me, and these are my two brothers, right? So again, let's look at the definition of sister taxa. Groups that share an immediate common ancestor. So in this picture, at least, what seems like a proper analogy for sister taxa, right? So we see that me and my two brothers, all three of us, share an immediate common ancestor. That would be my parents, right? So that would make me and my brothers analogously sister taxa, right? So that's just, to try to help everyone further understand this concept. But now we'll shift over to a phylogenetic tree. So in case you don't know, this is what a phylogenetic tree looks like. And something that's different between a phylogenetic tree and something like this, a family tree, is that phylogenetic trees, they compare different organisms, right? So for example, there's no phylogenetic tree for the koala families in the San Diego Zoo. Right? It's different organisms that we are comparing as opposed to a family tree when we're comparing, just one type of organism. Okay, so with that being said, what organisms marked as numbers in this example, what organisms are sister taxa? I'll give you guys like cool 5 seconds to answer that. Okay, so here are our sister taxa, okay? So 3 and 4 are sister taxa because they share an immediate common ancestor. And 5 and 6 are also sister taxa because they share an immediate common ancestor, okay? We can also do this for groups, right? So we can group together 3 and 4. We can group together 5 and 6. And these two can become sister taxa because they share an immediate common ancestor. You should be able to pinpoint several other examples of sister taxa within this phylogenetic tree, and if you can't, please do come to office hours. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and talk about the difference between derived and ancestral characteristics, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and spit out some definitions first. So a derived characteristic is an evolutionary novelty, okay? Something new, something unique to a particular clade, right? An ancestral characteristic, on the other hand, is a character that originated in an ancestor of the taxon. So I know that that's a lot of words, and in my opinion, it's much easier to go through an example to understand this than to just look at the definitions. So we'll go ahead and go back to the analogy that we started out with, so the analogy of my family tree. For the sake of properly applying these terms, I'm going to go ahead and flip my family tree so that it looks like this. And I'm also going to add my ancestors right there. So my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and beyond, right? Okay, so let's say that for the first time ever, this evolutionary novelty occurs and my dad exhibits rainbow-colored hair, right? And now let's say that my dad passes this rainbow-colored hair on to me, okay? So with that being said, it's an evolutionary novelty, but it's also passed down to me. So does that make it a derived or ancestral characteristic, or both? So I'll give you guys a minute to think about what you learned in lecture and try to apply it. Okay, so the answer is that this rainbow-colored hair characteristic is analogously a ancestral and a derived characteristic, okay? And we'll go into that a bit more. So let's say that we're walking through my family tree and we're going from my great ancestors to over here with me and my brothers. So again, we're going this way. All right, so when we're here with my fellow ancestors, as you can see, none of them have rainbow colored hair. But as we continue to progress, all of a sudden we see that my dad has rainbow colored hair. And when we go even further, we see that my dad passes rainbow colored hair onto me, hence making it an evolutionary novelty, something unique that started right here, right? And went and got passed down to myself. Okay, so again, it's a derived and it's also an ancestral characteristic depending on the orientation that you're looking at. So again, with derived characteristics, we're going from this way to this way. For analogous ancestral characteristics, we're moving from this way to this way, okay? So now let's start over here with my brothers and I. As you can see, I exhibit this rainbow colored hair trait, right? And if we continue to go this way, right, we see that my dad also exhibits this rainbow colored hair, aka I got this characteristic from my dad. So if we're looking at it in this direction, right, then we see that this is an ancestral characteristic. So again, rainbow colored hair is both an ancestral and a derived characteristic depending on the orientation in which you are approaching it. So now let's try to do our best to see how this looks like on a phylogenetic tree, right? So let's just pick any one of these characteristics. Let's go ahead and use this characteristic right here. So the development of lungs, okay? So again, the development of lungs is both a derived and an ancestral characteristic depending on the orientation in which you are looking at, okay? So let's see. If we are approaching this from a derived point of view, we are moving forward, okay? And this is the direction that I denote forward as. That's how forward looks like to me. But to be more specific, it's going from least specific to most specific on our phylogenetic tree, right? So as we're walking through this, we see lungs are this absolutely new thing that belongs to this clade right here. So the antelope, the bald eagle, and the alligator all exhibit lungs, right? On the other hand, if we're trying to look at it from an ancestral point of view, we're going to look at it backwards. And again, this is what backwards looks like to me, but to be more specific, it's going from our most specific group to our least specific group on our phylogenetic tree. So if we're looking at how lungs were developed, we're seeing it as an ancestral type of thing instead of a derived type of thing for this clade right here. So again, for this clade, if we're looking at it from this point of view, it's something that was passed down to these animals instead of being derived. And then the last thing that we're going to discuss today are character charts, right? So character charts are these weird, wonky things with lots of numbers in them. They might look a little bit complex, but they're really, really not, okay? So we're gonna go through the example. Okay, so let's talk about a leopard, for example, right? The leopard is the only organism within this phylogenetic tree that has hair, okay? So again, everything past this point has hair, and that's why only the leopard has hair, right? So we're gonna give, if we ask the question, has hair, question mark, we're gonna say yes, okay? Yes, in terms of character charts, translates to the number 1. So again, a leopard has hair. None of these other organisms have hair. So we're gonna say again, do you have hair? No, you get a 0. So all of these get zeros. Now let's look at, for example, an amniotic egg, okay? So we can see that everything past this point again has an amniotic egg. So a turtle and a leopard have amniotic eggs, okay? So again, when we ask the question, do you have an amniotic egg? They get a yes, AKA they get a 1 and a 1. Cool? The rest of these organisms, on the other hand, do not have an amniotic egg, so they all get zeros, okay? Let's do the last example, 4 walking legs. Everything beyond this point has 4 walking legs. Hence, when we ask the question, who has an amniotic egg, it's the salamander, the turtle, the leopard. Salamander, turtle, leopard all get a 1 for yes. The remainder of these organisms get a 0 for no. In case you were wondering, I know for this example and for a lot of other examples, there's this like pretty triangular shape that's created by the numbers. But that's only because of the way that these axes are ordered. So for example, if I were to switch hare and jaws, tuna and lamprey, just switch around random things, we wouldn't get this pretty little triangle, okay? So don't think like on your test, for example, that you just have to, I don't know, like start some trend and then fill out a triangle of ones, because it's a little bit more complicated than that. With that being said, that is our last slide. I want to remind you guys that we do have office hours and the schedule has been posted. So again, please, please, please feel free to reach out to us. We are here to help you guys succeed. So thank you.